Hello, are you going to welcome everyone now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, we're ready.
Good. Well, can I give you all a very big welcome, whether you are on Facebook or whether you're following streaming here at the Buddhist Society. It is my great pleasure to introduce this Abhidhamma course, which is coming from Shan State Buddhist University in Myanmar, and will go on now regularly at the same slot until we've finished right the way through. I should say a little bit about our speaker. We're very, very grateful that he's given us this time. Here in England, he's very well known as a very settled Theravada monk with his vihara in Oxford. And I've had the great privilege of being with him at the summer school last year and meeting him on other occasions. And so it gives me enormous pleasure today to introduce Venerable Dhammasami, to introduce this really important topic of the Abhidhamma. And those of you who come from the Mahayana tradition tend not to look too much at the Abhidhamma, but in my opinion, as a Mahayana student myself, you don't really understand Buddhism unless you have a good working knowledge of the Abhidhamma. And the Abhidhamma is really the jewel, the sort of intellectual jewel, such a thing, in the Buddhist teachings. It's a beautiful system, it's absolutely adamantine, and it has a kind of perfection which you will discover as you go through these series lectures. I would ask you please to pay attention to the reading list, and also just perhaps look at one book and get used to that book. And I think the one we're using is Bodhidharma's book on the manual of the Abhidhamma. So I think if you've got that book and get used to using the book, and then you use it as reference. Anyway, today we start the first talk on the two truths. Without further ado, and again, a big welcome to you all, I'll hand over now to Dhammasami. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chairman Desmond, for the kind introduction. Let's begin with the recitation of Namo Tassa 3 times. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. By the way, let me check. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mainly, I'm going to be focusing on the material that I've given, that we are going to be putting on the screen. But before that, let me give you just a short introduction to the Abhidhamma, or what Abhidhamma is. As we all know, even today in most Buddhist schools, the teaching of the Buddha is divided into 3 portions or 3 baskets. 3 baskets. The first one is the discipline. In Sanskrit, in Pali, we call it Vinaya. The second one, the discourses. Short discourses, many short discourses. Of course, some of them, comparatively, are a little bit longer than others. So they are called the sutta in Pali or sutras in Sanskrit. The last one is Abhidhamma. The last one is Abhidhamma. this Abhidhamma is not the discipline. Okay, it's not the rules of the monastic rules of conduct, like for monks, for nuns, the monastic rules, not the Vinaya. The second one is not the discourses, because the discourses by nature they are given to different people on different occasions. So the scope, the theme, the length, the approach, they all differ from they all differ from one another. Because the Buddha takes into consideration the temperament, the inclination, the level of his audience, his listeners, his student. So Abhidhamma is different from both of them in that is the analysis of what we say the mind and the body. The analysis of the mind and the body in detail, without taking any consideration of the location, the occasion, the listeners. Okay. So in that sense, the Abhidhamma is more analytical. Of course, as I will be explaining, okay, sometime later, after this, after I have touched upon the history of the text, the Sutta and the Abhidhamma, they overlap in contents, in themes, they overlap, and also in purpose. Well, before we actually go into that, let's talk about the Abhidhamma text. Now, as you know, you can hold Bible in one book like this, in one text like this, in one treaty. The Quran you can do like that. But when it comes to Indian regions, the Vedas, many volumes. The Buddhist text, also many volumes. When we say many volumes, we say dozens of them, maybe the original text, as we have them now, the Sri Lankan arrangement, the Thai arrangement, the Burmese arrangement. The Sri Lankan arrangement is more than three dozens. Is about 38 volumes. The Burmese, they arrange the same text in 40 volumes. The Thai, they arrange them, the same text, in 45 volumes. So many of them, many texts. But in terms of treaties, we usually call in Theravada school we say 7 treaties. Of course, in some of non-Theravada school also they have 7 treaties. The names are a little bit different. And maybe in the internal arrangement, they are also different. Now, these differences, we don't pay attention to them in Buddhist countries because, for example, the Tibetan scholars, they only study one Abhidhamma school. And like in Myanmar, in Burma, we also study just the Theravada Abhidhamma, one school of Abhidhamma. And how many schools? Of course, as we have them now, we have 3 schools extant. So this prompts a question, especially among Western scholars. If you differ so much, okay, is Abhidhamma the work of the Buddha? This is a heated question. Of course, if you ask traditional Buddhist scholars, may they be Theravadan, may they be Tibetan, may they be Chinese Mahayana, they would say they are the words of the Buddha, the words of the Buddha.
All right.
Okay, these are the words of the Buddha, because what we do is we don't look at the history. What we do is we examine the internal contents, the coherence, the consistency. Okay, we look at this. Is Abhidhamma teaching consistent with the teaching of the Four Noble Truths, for example? Or is it consistent with the 3 characteristics that every Buddhist school accepts? We have to say yes, a big yes. That is why the development or the historical analysis is not important among the Buddhist, among the traditional Buddhist scholars. But for critical scholars, like for modern scholars, they say, okay, they point out that the Buddha didn't actually teach Abhidhamma to human beings. Of course, this is according to the tradition also. The Buddha taught Abhidhamma to his mother in one of the heavens, the Taotians of heaven. So, if the scholar comes from a background that he has already rejected all other existences except human existence, then he would have doubt about the authenticity of the Abhidhamma. Many people reject it. They do so, okay, without ever reading any Abhidhamma text in detail. I should point out. Another one is that if we start with the sutras, we become familiar with the sutta. Okay, this particular sutra was taught to whom, where, on what occasion, in which context. When we become so familiarized with that, Abhidhamma is devoid of all those facts. So it's so dry for them. So this is another reason they say, okay, Abhidhamma may not be the words of the Buddha. At the moment, there are 3 schools of Abhidhamma extant in the world. What I'm going to talk about here for 6 weeks is obviously Theravada. You can't expect anything else. I don't know, okay, about the other 2 schools. Of course, one of them, Brahmagupta Abhidhamma, Dhammakupta school, okay, the Abhidhamma available in that school. By the way, Dhammakupta has its own Vinaya also. Mainly is practiced in Taiwan, in China, like that. I have been to a Vinaya conference in 2012. Okay, we have compared Vinaya, okay, page by page. Essentially, they are the same. Essentially, they are the same. But we haven't done this with Abhidhamma. So, the Dhammakupta school of Buddhism, which is available in East Asia, like Taiwan, like Korea, China, there is one Abhidhamma school and a set of texts. And it's available only in Chinese now. The second one is, of course, Mula Theravada Abhidhamma, and is available in Tibetan. So, Tibetan Geshe, monastic scholars, traditional Buddhist scholars, they know Abhidhamma. If we don't refer to text, a Tibetan Abhidhamma scholar and myself, for example, we can discuss Abhidhamma if we just focus on the contents without referring to any text. If we just talk about the contents, mostly we will be on the same page. We'll be on the same page. But when we start talking about the text, they are not familiar with the names of our text, Abhidhamma text, and we are not familiar with the name of that text either. That's what happened. You can look at there's one book, not very big, a good introduction to Abhidhamma by Geshe, okay, from Jamyang Center in London. When I read through his book, okay, everything is familiar to me. So I don't actually have any query, because from my point of view, from Abhidhamma, Theravada Abhidhamma point of view, I'm perfectly at home with what he says. Of course, except the Tibetan technical terms, it would be the same. If he reads, okay, any of the book that we are talking here, mostly, I wouldn't say everything, mostly, he would feel at home as well. Okay, now let's narrow it down to the Theravada Abhidhamma. In Theravada Abhidhamma, we talk about 7 texts. We talk about 7 texts. I'm not going through all the names today because it wouldn't make any difference to you. Those 7 texts, they focus on different aspects of the subject matter. Some of them would go a lot more into details. Okay. The tradition tells us that the Buddha taught Abhidhamma to the heavenly beings, including the one who used to be his mother. So we treasure this as a gesture of repaying gratitude towards the mother. Because the Buddha chose to give this teaching in a place that he did. And we also believe that considerably those people in the heavenly worlds, many heavens, many deva worlds, they can sit a lot longer. Okay, they can sit a lot longer. And even among ourselves, so we know we have different capacity to sit. Unfortunately, these days it happened that I have some back pain. I just think about Joe in Oxford. No, you might be able to give me some treatment. But I'm getting better, but I don't want to force myself. I was considering if I should do 1.5 hours. I think 1 hour is good this time. So in one stretch, the Buddha taught about the Abhidhamma. So to the angel, including his former mother, it was just a short teaching in terms of length. But for human being, it would go for 3 months continuously. 3 months. Okay, 90 days. The Buddha, he summarized the Abhidhamma to one of his two chief disciples, Venerable Sariputta, on daily basis, just a short one. I'm recounting from the commentary now. Just a short one. And Venerable Sariputta, he grasped everything just by receiving the gist of it. And it was Venerable Sariputta, who told the monks the version that we have it now. But only 6 of them, not 7 texts, only 6 texts. Only 6 texts. One of them came relatively late during Emperor Asoka's time. Okay, after the Sangha, after the monastic community was divided into many schools. We are told 18 of them. 18 of them. So, in explaining or in rebutting those other 18 schools that he thought, wasn't orthodox, wasn't authentic, that this last text of Abhidhamma came about. So I think this is a little bit, what shall we say? It tells us about the development of Buddhist schools in India. But those schools are no more now. What we have now is the Chinese Mahayana. If we say East Asian, that includes the Japanese, the Korean. Then we have Central Asian. There's the Mongolian, the Tibetan, the Bhutanese, and also Theravada, which is Southeast Asia. So we can look at 3 schools of Buddhism in terms of geography. Southeast Asian, of course Sri Lanka is South and Southeast Asian. And then we have Central Asian, then we have East Asian Buddhism. So we can look at Abhidhamma according to this geographical division. Dharmagupta Vinaya belongs to the East Asian Buddhist school. The Theravada Abhidhamma now belongs to the Central Asian school of Buddhism. Mainly in the popular description, we know it as Tibetan Buddhism. Then the one I'm using, okay, and I'm going to be talking about here, is from South and Southeast Asia, from Theravada school. Okay, I think this is enough as a history. Let's go to our topic today, the two truths, two types of truth. Two types of truth. We are quite familiar, most of us are quite familiar with this, with two types of truth. But from what I have gone through, like what I've learned from my Tibetan scholar friends, and also from Theravada in Sri Lanka, in Myanmar, in Thailand, there is misperception about these two types of truth. That is why I have given you a quotation from Bhikkhu Bodhi, comprehensive manual of Abhidhamma from this book. This is a translation from Pali. This manual is a summary, is the gist of the 7 texts of Abhidhamma, 7 treatises of Abhidhamma. So this is usually what we study. Okay, it has 9 chapters. I'm not going in. I'm not going through those chapters for these 6 lectures. Instead, okay, I'm picking up my own theme. Okay, my own theme. We're just trying to understand the mind, how Abhidhamma analyzes the mind. The short quotation from page 5 of this book is available online. Okay, is available online. The second one, which is not available online, is the book of my teacher. The quotation I use today is from Professor Y. Karunadasa, a Sri Lankan Abhidhamma scholar. Okay, he did his PhD at SOS, London University. The quotation that I have given you today actually is not his original quotation, but his translation of the commentary, the Pali commentary, about these two kinds of truth, 2 types of truth. Okay, let's now talk about the 2 types of truth. You already know one is conventional, the other is ultimate. So what do they mean? Conventional truth. Conventional truth is something that we regard as a truth because we agree, okay, because we have a consent. We call this a pen. We call this a pen. Everybody in English we call this a pen. I don't know how you call this in French, in Chinese, but as far as the English language is concerned, we call this as a pen. When we say a pen, then we understand. I mean, the mind conceptualizes its shape, its function, is okay. We conceptualize that, but we call this a pen. Instead of calling this a pen, I don't know if you call this fountain earlier. Okay, so in every language, the people they agree to call this. And we can still change the name. Instead of pen, we can call this something else. Why we can call this? Because it's all a consent that we develop among the people. In that sense, it's linguistic agreement, linguistic function. Okay, this is what we call conventional truth. Conventional truth. Desmond introduced me to you as Venerable Dhammasami. I might get another name if my teacher chose to name me. Maybe Sariputta. Then I might be known as Sariputta. Why we can change like this? Because the name, Dhammasami, the name Sariputta, is not real. It's not a real existence. That is why you can change it. But something that you cannot change that exists on its own. Something, let's talk about anger. Okay. When we get angry, you know how anger is felt. Anger has its own nature. Okay. It's destructive, it's rejecting. That sort of nature, that sort of thing is what we call ultimate truth. Ultimate truth. When you say, hey, Venerable Dhammasami, this Dhammasami is a name. Is a name. Okay, so this is conventional truth. But when you look at me from the ultimate truth, the perspective of ultimate truth, you need to look at, you need to look at the constituents that make Dhammasami. They are the mind and matter. Okay, the mind and matter. And we can actually expand those mind and matter into 5. That becomes 5 aggregates. We can expand them into 12. There will be 12 bases of the senses, how our senses work. And those constituents, they actually have their own characteristic. The function of the eye, the eye has its own function. It cannot function as ear, for example. They have their own. You cannot change it, but you can change my name. You can change my name. So these are what we usually call the difference between conventional truth and ultimate truth. To express it in a more academic manner, we can say conventional truth depends on the interpretation of the mind. The interpretation of our mind. Okay? Concept is the interpretation of the mind. Conceptual truth. But when we come to like anger, when we come to compassion, when we come to mindfulness, the function of mindfulness, we don't need a concept. Because mindfulness has its own function. We just need to discover it. We just need to develop that capacity of mindfulness. In that sense, mindfulness as an ultimate truth is beyond convention, is beyond concept. Anger in its own nature is beyond concept. When it comes to concept, some people say anger is good. Some people anger is not good. These are opinions, these are concepts that we impose on anger. But anger itself, okay, it just functions the way it does. Jealousy, some people will say jealousy is good because it tells you about danger, it alerts you about danger. Some people say it's not good because it makes you insecure unnecessarily. Okay, it pushes you into fight and flight mode. Some people would argue. So you can see the two concepts about jealousy. Those two concepts, they are conventional reality. But the nature of jealousy itself is ultimate reality. So Abhidhamma focuses entirely on the ultimate truth. Okay, on the ultimate truth. All Buddhist schools, we agree that there are four ultimate truths. One is the mind. One is the mind. I'm going to write something here. I'm going to write on the screen. Maybe. There are four of them. One is called consciousness. The other is the factors of consciousness. The third one is the physicality, that is the matters. And the last one is nirvana. Now, my assistant is working on the screen, okay, so that I can try you the four things. Okay. The first one is called citta. Citta, this is consciousness. Okay, this is consciousness. The ability to be conscious of something, to be aware of something is the cognitive work. Okay, citta. The second one is called cetasika. In Pali, cetasika. Cetasika, there are different factors that change the mind into different, that change the mind, that change the consciousness into different things. For example, jealousy is cetasika. Anger is also cetasika. Mindfulness is cetasika. Compassion is cetasika. Greed, wisdom, ignorance, they all are cetasika. They all are cetasika. They call on the citta. They call out the citta. If anger is cetasika, with anger and citta coming together, we call that angry mind. That mind is citta. Anger is cetasika. With this, I'm telling you that citta and cetasika, they always work together. So what do we get here? We are getting that, okay, when somebody gets angry, he's being conscious of something. If he is angry with with the sound, for example, then his conscious of the sound is consciousness. Then anger as a reaction to that sound is Cetasika. But of course, this consciousness and this anger as a Cetasika, they cannot be separated. They always work together. But analytically, if we consider Abhidhamma to be psychology, in Buddhist psychological analysis, we try to see different things. We try to analyze into different constituents. Why? Because we believe citta, or the mind, can be purified. Then in order the mind to be purified, what kind of Cetasika that we need to develop, and what kind of Cetasika that we need to do away with, we need to abandon. With this, Abhidhamma is not only psychological, but is also ethical. It's also ethical. That is why we would be using the word wholesome, unwholesome, like wholesome Cetasika, unwholesome Cetasika, wholesome citta, unwholesome citta. We'll be using these terms, because Abhidhamma is psychology, is also ethics. Is also ethics. So we have got two now. One is citta, which is consciousness. In this book is the first chapter. The second one, Cetasika, is the second chapter in this. So in this series of 6 lectures, I will be focusing mainly on the second chapter. I'll be devoting three talks on that. Okay, three talks to that. And only after I have discussed the Cetasika, the second chapter, into different groups, then I will come back to the first chapter, which is citta. Everything else is dependent on these 2 chapters. These 2 chapters. The third one is called rupa. This is matter, this is material. This pen is rupa. The camera is rupa. The computer is rupa. My physical body is rupa. Is matter. Okay, is material, is physicality. What we have then is this one is what we call mind. Citta and Cetasika is what we call the mind. Then rupa is what we call matter. These 3, we can sum them up into 2, into mind and matter. So this physical body, we have to analyze them into these 2. Into these 2. There is an interesting question that people often ask. Where is soul? Okay, where is the soul? How do you consider it? Because in some religious philosophy, the soul and the mind are 2 different things. I'm not talking about the popular use of the English language soul, okay? I'm talking about religious philosophy, religious ideology in some non-Buddhist schools. So they consider soul to be different from this. But the Buddha says, when he examined closely with his meditative mind, with high concentration, he could see only this. Empirically, I use the word empirical. Empirically, only these exist, Chitta, Chittasika, and Rupa. When we get angry at each other, when we get frustrated, when we get irritated, when we become compassionate, when we understand each other, when we don't understand, everything can be analyzed in terms of Chitta and Chittasika. And those Chitta and Chittasika, they have impact on our physical body, which is the Rupa, which is the matter. So here, there is also a connection between mind and matter. This is what Abhidhamma is interested in. Then what's number 4? What's number 4? The number 4 is of course Nibbana or Nirvana, okay? Nibbana, Nirvana. Ontologically, when the mind, when the Chitta and Chitta, when we have got rid of all the negativity, greed, anger, delusion, they never arise again. And that state of mind is what we call Nibbana. Okay, the last one. To add Nibbana to this, indicate that Abhidhamma is basically an ontological system. When we analyze the mind, when we analyze emotion in Chittasika, we do so because we are interested in ontology. That is liberation of the mind. Liberation of the mind from jealousy, liberation of the mind from fear, liberation of the mind from anger, we believe is possible. That belief is represented here by Nibbana. So there are only four subject matters in the Abhidhamma. Chitta, Chittasika, Rupa, Nibbana, only 4 of them. Chitta is consciousness. Chittasika, we call them sometimes factors of the mind, sometimes formation of the mind, different interpretation. But is good, okay, to get familiar with this word, with this technical term, Chittasika. Chittasika simply means factors that happen with consciousness. Okay, simply mean that. Chittasika. Then we have Rupa. That's the physical body, the material inside the body, outside the body. Everything is Rupa. Then if the first one, Chitta, the second Chittasika, the third one, Rupa, if these 3, if they belong to what we consider to be the cycle of life and death, or samsara, then the last one, Nibbana, is about the cessation of that samsara. So you can see the system, the whole system is arranged in this way: Chitta, Chittasika, Rupa, Nibbana. Consciousness, then Chittasika, and then matter or Rupas, and then we have Nibbana. To be talking in this term, okay, we don't talk about location, we don't talk about London, we don't talk about Bangkok, we don't talk about people. You don't even have the name Buddha in that. When you have Buddha, the constituents of Buddha is analyze into Chitta, Chittasika, Rupa, Nibbana. Yeah. Okay, I'm very sorry for the technical problems. Now, let me come to the last point and conclude. At the beginning, I talked about misunderstanding between these two truths, especially among the Abhidhamma scholar and also among the meditators. Many people consider ultimate truth by its name, to be superior to the conventional truth. Some people even go as far as only the ultimate truth is true and conventional truth is not. The question that we have to ask here is that if the conventional truth is not true, why did the Buddha use conventional truth? If I know the conventional truth is not true and I'm using it, am I not deceiving you? This is the reason I give you this quotation from the Pali commentaries. In the three Pali commentaries, they are the same. Odin, can you put on the screen the quotation that I sent it to you? The two truths. I'm going to be reading. I'm going to be reading it now. This statements referring to convention-based things, sanketa, are valid. Meaning conventional truth is valid because they are based on common agreement. This is a translation from the Pali. Statements referring to ultimate categories, paramata, are valid because they are based on the true nature of the real existences. That's the stanza that we have as a standard stanza that we are in Theravada Abhidhamma. The commentary explanation comes after that. Here, in references to living things like God, Brahma, etc., are samutikata. Samutikata is Samuti is the Pali word for convention. For convention. Gata means expression or word. Whereas references to impermanent, suffering, egolessness, anicca, dukkha, anatta, the aggregates of the empiric individuality, there are 5 aggregates, 5 khandha, the basis that the ayatana and elements of sense perception, there's a dhatu, mind recognition, basis of mindfulness, right effort, etc., are paramatakata. This is the definition of the 2 types of truth. When it comes to the controversy, some people would say, Samuti Satya, in Burmese pronunciation, Samuti Tissa. In Thai pronunciation, Samuti Satya. The conventional truth. Many people would consider to be lower than the ultimate truth, Paramata Satya. But this is not the case. If you read here, according to the explanation of the commentary, one who is capable of understanding and penetrating to the truth and hoisting the flag of arhatship, meaning listening to the teaching of the conventional truth, and hoisting arhatship means achieving liberation. When the teaching is set out in terms of generally accepted convention, to him doctrine based on Samudhi Satya, meaning the suttas, the discourses themselves, which mainly employ conventional truth, but there are occasions which the sutta also employ ultimate truth. But even when the Buddha uses conventional truth, by listening to those conventional truths, people can still get enlightened. This is the point I'd like to make. The two kinds of truth, no one truth is higher than the other. It's just the Buddha's different skills, in understanding his listeners. When he should use conventional truth, when he should use ultimate truth. Some people, after studying Abhidhamma, they would go to the extent of saying that unless you know Abhidhamma, you cannot realize the Dhamma, you cannot realize enlightenment. Some people go that far. But here, if you read the 3 bullet points, you will see that the two kinds of truth, they are different choices that the Buddha made based on the listeners. In the sutta, in the discourses, there are many places that when the Buddha talk about, when he compare the mind, for example, to a river, to a mountain, to an irrigation, the training to an irrigation. There is no irrigation in terms of ultimate truth. But the Buddha used the simile of irrigation, and people become enlightened. Even according to the tradition, Abhidhamma was taught by the Buddha on the 7th year after his enlightenment. Before that, no Abhidhamma. Do we have enlightened people? Do we have people achieving enlightenment before that? Yes, we do. Actually, many of them. So the commentary talks or gives a simile that these different kinds of truth, conventional truth, ultimate truth, they are similar to different languages, like English, French, and Spanish, for example. If the listener understands only in Spanish, then we all, the Buddha would be using Espanol to give the teaching, to awaken him. If the listener is French, then the Buddha would be using Francais to awaken him. And today we use English. So these are just practical matter, practical choices. Practical choices available to the Buddha. So it's very important for us who study Abhidhamma that we don't abandon the suttas. It's very important. And also not to not to see the sutta as a kind of second-class teaching. You see? Because the Buddha himself, he used the Samudhi Satya. Samudhi Satya, that is conventional truth, conventional terms, in order to convey the truth, in order to awaken his listeners, to awaken the faculties of his listeners. For people who are more analytical, who would only understand the truth, who would only become awakened if they hear the teaching in terms of ultimate truth, the Buddha would use them. But sometimes he used both of them. He used both of them. So this is a very important fact that we need to understand. Then the Abhidhamma is going to be mainly focused on the Paramattha Katha, Paramattha Satya, that is the ultimate truth. But it would be great if we can read one sutta and try to understand that in terms of Abhidhamma. If not, during this series of six talks, and I hope some other time we can pick up one or two sutras and try to understand that from the perspective of Abhidhamma. If there's no question, we may just end it here for today. We have a lot of technical difficulties.
But thank you very much for your opening talk, and in presenting these four sort of main categories. Well, the two, first of all, the ultimate truths, conventional and ultimate, and then consciousness, its contents, matter, rupa, and nirvana. And these are things for us to ponder before next week. Perhaps at the very beginning of the session, we can have a few questions from today's session.
Okay.
That might well work quite well, because people have the time to think it through, and then ask their questions. But can I thank you once again?
It's also good if you can email the question. Thank you.
Yes, email a question. Very good idea.
Thank you.
But thank you very, very much.